everybody, and welcome to another edition of the podcast. Anything that's been on your mind recently?
So I was talking to a friend this morning about what an agentic organization of the future might look like,
Okay.
and it was kind of coming up. It was like bringing up some spicy takes. I feel like
I
that.
always like a spicy take.
Yeah. So I was saying that I basically was thinking that everything we've been seeing now with the layoffs of these big companies
Right.
where what Block is doing is especially interesting because I think they're cutting at least from some stuff that I read, maybe not directly from them, but in the space, was that they're kind of really reducing meetings and looking to, like, have more people work directly on content and all of that, or produce things maybe more closely to instead of maybe, like, more middle managers or things like that, um, which
Mhm.
is certainly interesting.
Yeah.
What I was thinking is, like, in some ways, I think it's a lack of creativity
Uh-huh.
for a company to just the framing of replacing humans with I think is, like,
Uh-huh.
the most shallow near-term thing you could do, and I understand there's all these dynamics at play,
Mhm.
um, but let's just think about context for a second, right? So when you're working with AI, the most important thing to be able to get really good results out of it is context. Context engineering is this term now, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Anybody who has been working at your company, right? Okay, so some people maybe they're not aligned with the mission, or they're not putting in enough time, or there's poor performance or whatever. There's sometimes there's behavior like that that isn't conducive to helping the company with what it needs to do. But besides that, right, I think there's such a massive opportunity to be upskilling people rather than replacing them. And the reason is if context is king,
Mhm.
those people have so much context already about the company, the organization, like the people in it, how it works, the processes. And so the thing is that and this is like a point I think is that I think the context that a human gathers will never completely overlap with the context an AI could gather or have access to. I think I would argue that there's always some gap. There's some context that a human is going to, like, pick up or absorb that you're basically, like, never really gonna get that into an AI system. And there's, like, a lot of ways you could take this, but if that's the case, you should be designing almost like this agentic aura or like a system of AI tools or agents that basically make that person so much more powerful. And
Mhm.
in the long run, you're gonna get so much more benefits from that.
Mhm.
Because, you know, I think, our subconscious is crazy powerful. It's like, and also we are effortless, like, humans are meaning-making machines, right? Like, we effortlessly flip between perspectives and framing for what we're doing, and we can you can go from cooking a meal to hop in your car and driving to, like, working on your computer to, like, playing a video game, and you're just, like, you are the same in all of those, and yet you are able to adopt perspective, and it's almost like you're in a different environment in all of those, but it's like a
Right.
mental environment.
Yeah. I mean, I really like how you're putting this. Um, but I think there's the potential of what a human being can be or is capable of. But, I mean, have you ever had an experience working with somebody where, for some reason, um, common sense doesn't seem to be a part of their equation, or the ability to or willingness to reason through something from first principles? Not that that requires great intelligence or, like, that is beyond the capability of humans, but if somebody isn't using the tools that they have in front of them in the right way, even though they have that potential or that capability, then are you gonna get the result? And of course, that's a really hard part of running an organization or hiring people is you have to make really tough decisions, even if somebody is well-intentioned or has a lot of potential. It doesn't mean they're gonna be able to get the job done, and if they can't, keeping people around who aren't able to do that can be really detrimental to the ability to hit the objective overall. So, not to bring in too much cynicism
No,
into
no, I love
this,
it. I love it.
hope, but just to kinda
Yeah.
keep things, like, grounded.
No,
Curious
no, of
what you
course.
think
I
about
mean,
that.
of course, at the end of the day, you know, you have to be producing value of some kind, and I think you touched on on one of the most important things, and I feel like one of the most important things is, like, willingness, and I think there's almost maybe 2 kinds of willingness here. One is a willingness to accept that you don't know something.
That's big.
Actually, this was for a while, in one of my past roles, this was in some ways, I think this might be one of the most important interview questions you could ever or interview, like, line of questions you might ask somebody, but
Mhm.
basically, in any interview, you 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 only wanna hire someone if or they might be an ideal candidate if you can get them to a place to say, "I don't know," in the interview. Because someone who says, "I don't know," they're coachable.
Right. Yes.
They're honest.
Right.
You can from a space of "I don't know," you can work. That's great, right? But if someone who
Right.
never says, "I don't know,"
Yeah.
they might be kind of always putting on the impression of, like, doing the work or getting close to doing the work, but and so then it might I think often sometimes those kinds of people, you might get, such delayed effects before you realize that there's just a communication issue or they're not on the same page with you.
100%. Or you're trying to get on the same page, but their version of the truth keeps changing, or the story keeps changing to kind of adapt what they think is gonna make them look good in the situation.
Right.
And so they can't acknowledge what they don't know. They can't acknowledge you can't have a dialectical, um, process where you weigh the pros and cons of things that where the truth seeking, objective is prioritized. Instead, these other agendas of are get into the mix, and I think and I find, like, when somebody does stuff like that, to me, it's like they're basically I useless in an organizational context, like, to, be a little bit blunt about it.
Sure, yeah.
But it's like, even if the person's highly intelligent and really well-intentioned and really motivated, like, if they can't have a consistent principled analysis or dialogue about something, there's no way to collaborate effectively or problem solve around complex issues. And instead, you just get all these like political games where
Yeah.
people are trying to take credit or offload blame. It has nothing to do with the customer, it has nothing to do with the company's mission. Um, and so, but I think the irony there is people who are highly insecure are project overconfidence. Like, you would think if you're insecure, you would show humility because 'cause you're like, "I don't believe in myself, I don't know what's going on." But when you're insecure, you are so anxious about it that you want to project, and kinda hide the weakness. So there's like this overcompensation of like, "No, I know everything." Where somebody who is like comfortable and confident, they can admit what they don't know because it doesn't threaten their ego in this deep way that kind of triggers like an existential need. It's like, I'm comfortable knowing that, I don't know certain things or admitting I don't know certain things. That's fine. Like my ego can take it, right?
But I I would argue that's a skill issue.
Yeah.
Like, why can't that be upskilled? Like, dude, are we
Yeah.
getting superhuman AI or what, dude? Are we getting, like, the therapist from the future? Like, again, I was gonna say, so I said the one type of willingness. I mean, basically, I'm, agreeing 100%. But I just so willingness to say I don't know, right? And then the other type of willingness is willingness to put in the time. Like real like that is the thing today, right? If you are willing to put in the time to work with AI to get results, which also is maybe kind of another ego check,
It is.
or it's like a form of like, because it doesn't really matter anymore whether you believe you can do something. It's just a matter of there's a notion of like how much time it will take. But, like, honestly, I think the most important attributes to hire someone these days are, like, those 2 kinds of willingness.
I agree, 100%, and, I think it is related to, like, a similar thing, um, where, if you're, uh, um, if you're willing to like, a lot of people, they think of themselves as not intelligent or not good at something. Like, "I'm not good at math," or "I'm not good at this," or "I'm not good at that," and a lot of times that started at a young age where, even when you're in elementary school, there's already this division that starts happening between, like, the smart kids and the dumb kids, or, like, who has, like, the special talented program versus the kids who are, like, and, like, some of that has to do with, like, actual, like, ability or IQ or genetics, but there's also the story and the narrative and the identity that emerges. And, like, I think a lot of people who think they're bad at something, who think they're bad at math, they'll go to look at some math, and it'll immediately be overwhelming and feel impossible. And what they don't realize is the person who's good at math also feels that way when they start. But they think the person who's good at math just looks at it and it all makes sense. Right? But the difference with the smart person is not that they just get it immediately. I mean, maybe some super genius does, some von
Sure.
Neumann is, like,
Right, yeah.
deriving Euclid's propositions when he's 5 years old or whatever. But, like, a lot of times it has more to do with patience, with curiosity, with allowing the learning process to proceed where there's a lot of stumbles, there's a lot of setbacks, there's a lot of frustrations, having the emotional temperament where that again, it links oftentimes to insecurity, where if that triggers this anxiety or this feeling insecurity, you can't keep going and you just kinda give up and you're like, "I can't do this." But if you have the patience and the wherewithal, and ideally, because the other thing is a lot of kids aren't taught that learning is fun. It's just work or it's stressful or it's always associated with these negative experiences. But when it's more of a playful, you don't have to arrive anywhere. It doesn't have to be anything. It's just thinking, what about this? What
Yeah.
this, that, and then that creates more space where you can just slowly over time try things out and learn and kind of feel your way into it. So, I think that is a similar root of all these different issues of like, I think Pascal said that like man's biggest problem is that he can't sit alone quietly in a room by himself. Cause that's the other thing is like when you're just, can you sit still? Can you slow down? Can you slow your thinking and just wonder about something for a second without knowing the answer? And oftentimes that is related to your comfort with just emptiness or silence. If there's this anxiousness that has to fill it in right away, then you can't really have deep thought about something.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It almost makes me feel like you almost need a level of fearlessness,
Mhm.
and that might be another really important quality. You almost also need a fearlessness to start to work on problems or in a space that you haven't before, because it's like this it's like this trade-off, right? Like, you don't know, like, if you were really good at something, you would only know that because you went through it and you did it and you did a lot of work with it, but you can never know that before you start. And and this is all of this though, I'm skill issue is like a funny phrase, but really I do wonder if it is largely something that an AI can make you get a lot better at.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a mix of both, right? There's like the bucket of people where they're ready to have this activated. They just need the right teacher. And that's the category where it's like, yes, AI can solve that. Then you have the bucket of people where like temperamentally or where they're at in life or for whatever reason, you could give them the perfect teacher, the perfect everything. It's just not going to work. It's not going to click, at least for that moment in their life. Like maybe
Sure.
something else will happen. Maybe some life experience needs to happen. Maybe they need to like go on vacation or, meditate or like something more than an intellectual
Yeah.
exercise has to occur to kind of like develop the person, which I mean, AI can help with that too. So maybe I'm being overly limiting here because AI can be your
I
shaman, it can be your
I
priest,
mean,
like whatever you need it to be.
I kind of wonder if I've been thinking about this, like, there's this TV show that I really like the TV show The Magicians. It's
I
like
haven't seen it.
it's like a comfort show for me. It's kind of campy and, but it's I'm a sucker for, like, fantasy world building, and whenever anything has, like, its own someone comes up with, like, a magical system and rules that are, like, unique and so I'm like, "Ah, let me go check this out." I really like the world building, and they've got some interesting, unique aspects of how magic works and things like that in the show, um but, you know in one of the later seasons, they basically go on this quest to kind of I won't say more, I don't wanna spoiler it. It's
Well,
an older show, but yeah, spoiler alert. But they go on this quest to, like, and the quest is, like, gnarly, like, really dangerous, um, really difficult, kind of even, like, way harder than almost, like, normal life problems or things like that, and it just got me thinking,
mm,
like how fun, like, maybe there's a really fun way you could build an AI that essentially gives you, like, growth quests
mhm,
to do in your real life
mhm,
to kind of, like, level up, like, emotionally or spiritually or, like, overcome a lot of these things, because
mhm,
like, once you go through a lot of these, you look back and you're like, "Wait, I was so anxious or nervous about" like, people say this a lot about public speaking, right? I
sure,
mean,
yeah,
you know, I think it's a common thing in surveys that people would rather die,
yeah,
they are literally more afraid of public speaking than they are of death.
right, yeah, I've seen that too. It's pretty remarkable.
And so but it's also one of those things where it's like a muscle, and if you do it, like I've started to do it more and more. I was used to be very nervous. My, like, palms would sweat, like, oh my god. But then, I think after a couple 100 times, I finally was able to, like, get over it, to some degree.
Right,
And also recognize the other thing is that the nervousness can be good. It actually makes you sharp and
sure,
take it seriously.
yeah,
So it's not even a bad thing, and even that framing of it, helped. But I just yeah, I think, but again, this is where I feel like we're not even giving a space for AI to, like, help us be better humans in all ways
right,
because I think we literally take a lot of things for granted. Like, we take for granted that or at least at least maybe me and my past self or you maybe see other people, they just take for granted that they are unable to do a certain thing. Like, they
yeah,
have such an internal identity.
right,
That's not true. It's, like, literally not true. It's literally, like, not it's just some story they started telling themselves. some story I was telling myself, AI can help you break out of that.
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of these stories are deeply embedded in our culture, um, religion, or family dynamics, dynamics around shame. I think that's a big one. People feeling like they're worthless or they have no value, they have no power, and all of these energies and stories aren't just in the individual, but are in the collective, and it's being reinforced. And some of it is promulgated in the media, or um, if you want to control somebody or have power over somebody, then it can be easier to do that if you are promulgating these stories about people's powerlessness. Even if that's not happening consciously, like, the incentives are wired such to do that. So I think that's kind of, you know I'm even looking at something like the story of Adam and Eve in the garden, and the fall of man and original sin, like, all these things are encoded, and I think deep in the human psyche, in the unconscious and in the repressed pain, in the places where people don't want to go, things they don't want to fear or feel, is usually these deep feelings of shame, guilt, um, fear, anxiety. Anxiety not just about death, but about the nature of reality itself. Um, and so there's all this stuff, underneath. And I think the really powerful thing about meditation is that it teaches you to stop running away from those things. Like, we have Heidegger talks about this, actually, that basically it's really interesting how he puts it in Being and Time, that there's because there is this kind of terror underneath that we're unconscious of. Like, we're just kind of thrown into the world, and we're not fully conscious of all the things that are driving us and motivating us. So there's before we're able to even reflect on it, we kind of already have this instinctual flight away from ang anxiety, existential anxiety. So Heidegger says that what happens is there's a flight into inauthenticity, because if I interpret reality as I'm seeing it, then I have to confront all this stuff that I don't wanna feel or experience. But if instead I kind of borrow other people's story about reality, so you kinda that's sort of where the group think happens, where you're not in your own experience. You're in this projected sense of what they are doing. So he literally calls it the they self, where you're not thinking in
Interesting.
terms of I, you're thinking in terms of what do they think. And there's this almost anesthetizing thing where, like, in the they, there's no death. In the they, there's nothing, like, it's this inauthentic kind of fake reality. So, a lot of times, like, and you'll see people, they'll use this vernacular where they'll be like, "Should we care about this?" Or like, "Why are we so upset about this?" Like, what is this "we" that they're talking about? It's almost as if their identity has merged with this group. It almost is, it's, like, connected to popularity contests, or, like, are you in the in group or the out group, and your identity isn't this authentic, like, individual loner. Your identity is, like, you don't believe in yourself, you believe in the group, and that is kind of helping you deal with this existential anxiety. So for Heidegger to have to, engage in philosophy requires this authentic interrogation of your own experience, and to turn towards the anxiety, not away from it, and reclaim your own sense of reality that has nothing to do with what they think, but is about what do you think? What do you experience? What do you feel? And that does require courage, that does require strength, um, and it can be very difficult to, like, go through something like that, but then at the other end, um, you have this foundation to relate to things on the basis of truth or on the basis of being or on the basis of what they are, not just popularity contests or ego games or politics, but, like, the underlying reality is no longer so terrifying or so buried that it can't be accessed, like, that becomes sort of the ground and the basis, and that is the source of any kind of real power in the world, where then you can create your own reality and have your own influence on things and not just be like a pawn in somebody else's, like, manipulation.
Dude, that's some powerful stuff right there. You know, just one comment I'll say is, mm, you know, there's this oftentimes you might hear, I don't know about often, but there's this concept of like the fire of awareness or the fire of attention. And it's more so that, like, you need, like, courage, but I think it's really that for those negative emotions that get stored in the nervous system, in the body, um, maybe in the psyche, for those to leave you, they that you can't run from it's like you can't run from them. That you like, meditating and creating space to observe whatever is going on within you provides a space for those things to leave you, but before they leave you, they make themselves known.
Right.
And so that's why it can be so uncomfortable and so painful. And this is why I think it's very important to get a meditation teacher or someone who's very experienced in meditation, especially if like the deeper practices. And there's, you know, a lot of great organizations and stuff. I feel very fortunate. I myself had a really good teacher. And, you know, and it's honestly an ongoing thing, but when you come out the other side and when you get freedom from shame or negativity or stress or, you know, things from the past, I mean, it's like the best thing ever. I mean, it's like anything you ever it's like no matter what you might ever be looking for outside in the world, inside you have a richer treasure. But it's just covered with, like, some black dust, and you just gotta clean the dust. It might look really thick. Oftentimes, it's not as thick as it looks, just looks really thick. But then, you know, a little bit of the fire of attention, fire of awareness, and a willingness to just be uncomfortable and to sit with whatever it is, purifies it, it leaves your system, and then you are this like, the diamond that you are, the gem that you are, like, shines brilliantly. And you
Well
like
said.
you said, you gain all this power and you become more influential, and I don't see why AI can't help unlock that. I don't know.
No, I think it can. I absolutely think it can, you know, and, I mean, I've talked to AI about stuff like this, and it seems very conversant and, you know, gets it immediately and is able and has insights about these types of topics, and, I'm sure there's gonna be ways to develop that and kind of formalize that into tools and systems that people can use.
Well, the thing I love about it is these things have the capability for infinite patience, infinite gentleness.
Right.
Dude, come on, if you're a human on this planet, you've gone through some shit,
Yeah.
dude. Like,
Yeah.
there's no way, like, whether it's, like, some family or some, you know, whether it's in school or whatever, like, dude, that's part of what it is to be human, right?
Yes.
Like,
Yes.
and you know, it can be a lot of pain, a lot, you know, but for what you really are, like, you are so much bigger than that.
Right.
But if that isn't cleared out, then, you know, you can't see it or feel it or like identify with it. And so,
Mhm.
and so in some ways, it's almost like I'm reminded of, like, this workbook I worked through once, for just some specific things I was working on, like, I don't know, like 5, 10 years ago, and, like, you know, basically it was, like, just a series of very personal, intimate questions designed to help you pull out things you might be, stuck on related and, is like very emotional for me. A lot of stuff came up. And then I mean, I felt so much freedom after, but what was it at the end of the day? It basically was this workbook of like, it was like 25 pages. Every page had like 5 to 7 questions. And it took me, I didn't, I would sit for a couple hours at a time and work through. I actually had a friend at the time. We were both doing it. So we were both working through it, which was kind of nice. But like, there's no reason you couldn't get the same thing from an AI, like curated to help you walk through that process. And not only that, it could go farther because it could meet you where you are. If something's especially difficult, it could, and like, we're talking about like bringing such like like talking about empowering somebody and freeing them. Cause a lot of this stuff is like, it only has power over you because you're not willing to like work through it.
Or another way of saying it is you're not willing to name it, right? I mean, that's a huge thing in psychoanalysis is just the power to say the thing, the thing that you feel like you can't say. It's too hard to say. It's too difficult. It's too painful. But then when you say it, it completely transforms your relationship to it and you can see it from the outside. Once you name the thing, you're outside of it. You're looking at it. You're not in it
I
anymore.
think that's the most important thing because until you do that, I think you think that's you.
Exactly. And that is sort of our role in creation. The human is here to name things. Like, it's really interesting because it's like the world somehow the world already has the capacity to be named. This all comes from a philosopher, I'm interested in Walter Benjamin, who has, he was alive in the early 20th century. He has all these really interesting theories of language that I think are highly applicable to AI. But there's this concept that it's like there's already this potential in everything for it to be known through as an abstract thing in language. But that could never be actualized without the human.
Interesting.
Like the mountain already has this capacity, this potential to be understood through a name or through symbols or through, mental abstraction or conceptualization. And like somehow it's the essence of what the thing is more than just its sensory data. Like what is the chairness of a chair?
Right.
And that thing about it requires the human being. Like, if there was no humans, that wouldn't
You need the
exist.
observer
And the namer,
and the namer.
because the animals can, like, see things, but it's like the human can give it the name.
Well, it's like the human can invent the meaning or invent the concept.
Exactly.
So maybe it's not necessarily, maybe by name, like you're using the word name, maybe it's a little bit deeper or a little fuller of a where it's like it's the concept of the thing.
But the concept of the thing and the name of the thing slip into each other because ideas and language, like the word logos represents that. The ancient Greek word for language also meant word, ratio, logic. So there's this it's hard for us to understand what logic is or what concepts are apart from language.
Right, right.
Not to say that they're the same thing. Like there's all these interesting subtle distinctions we can make without having to collapse them into each other, but they're very interconnected. And so that naming power that we have is sort of the fundamental unique human task. And when we name things in ourselves, in our experience, and when we especially name the unnamed, that has this transformative power on the thing.
It's almost like if you can name something, you start to have power over it.
Yeah. And or if you want to bring something into the world, if you can name it, that's one way of creating it, manifesting it. And there's no more powerful example of that than with AI because I mean, think about it, with an AI, basically, I mean, I know there's probably some limits to this, but it feels like you could think of like every kind of software that could be written is already in the latent space. You just have to name it. Like any software that could ever be created, if I can in my prompt describe what it is, the AI will make it real. I just have to be able to say what it is. That's my job, right? So like we were talking about at the beginning, like are AIs going to replace humans? Like that's the thing I don't think they will replace. The human has to name the thing. Once it's named, the AI can go from there.
Yeah.
But what is it that we want to conjure out of the latent space? Like the LLM is sort of exists outside of time. Like it's just a stateless function.
It's just a sale, yeah.
And so it's already all there.
Well, I mean, if you think literally about the token space, like tokens that it can produce. I mean, actually, it's like I'm thinking through a little experiment you might literally be able to try. Um, I mean, it'd be interesting, so this gets into something that's like I think I've seen people talk about, but the way these things are trained right now is they're trained to be like really good instruction followers and to be accurate according to like some verifiers. They write code that's correct. They, do all that stuff. And in some ways, that might be limiting under some circumstances because what you're talking about, like the space of all possible software exists. I mean, it is true. So at a fundamental, like that if you look at the token space for what an LM can produce in terms of tokens it can output, with that set of tokens, like that's a finite space of tokens. And with that set of tokens, you can construct all the terms and symbols you need for any programming language. And so then therefore you could write all the question really though is this is really curious, is like, are there some spaces of software that are very difficult to get the AI to produce
Yeah,
because of the
that's
way it's
interesting.
currently trained? Because there's been
Right.
people talking about training them to be diverse.
Mhm.
So, like, rather than give the single best answer, there's like, maybe it's a different architecture. There's literally a different, maybe, layer at the end of the neural network or somewhere else where it will you can kind of just, like, sample it, and it's optimizing for diversity in
Mhm.
outputs
Mhm.
rather than, the best according to some metric because,
Right.
for
Y
what
Yeah, I
you're
mean,
saying.
I thought I read maybe Karpathy or somebody was talking about how a lot of times when you're doing prompting, it will kinda converge towards sort of like a mediocre average, and, like, you wanna kind of direct it into these spaces where there's, like, more originality or potential for creativity, and the prompting can kind of steer it, depending on the language that you use to try to, like, not have it just converge to, like, you know, um which is basically slop, right, is the convergence
Yeah,
to this,
exactly.
like, kinda mediocre average, and but there's, like in the space, there's, like there's things that it can produce that aren't slop or are super original or super, um, creative and I mean, like, maybe a more concrete example, because a lot of people, they insist, they're like, "Oh, the AI can't produce anything original." It's just like this repetition of,
No
it's
way,
just like
no way.
just one series of copyright violation after the next. They're just like, copying, pasting from the training material, that's kind of the mentality, but what's happening with math, I think, is really showing it's harder to make that case because there's, like, the Erdos problems,
Mhm.
right? And people are like, I just saw a tweet today where this guy was like, "Yeah, I had this, like, kind of basic intuition about maybe how to solve one of these problems, and I just, like, gave it to ChatGPT Pro, um, and, like, went for a walk and came back, and then it had a solution, and then he put the solution into Aristotle or one of these, like, formalized, proving
Sure.
systems, and it, like, passed and was like, this, like, unsolved math problem that's, like, on the list of problems
It's
people are trying to
amazing.
solve is solved. So it's like, that's an example where, like, the solution to a math problem that's never been solved before is a potential output of the LLM if you can ask the right question.
Yeah. Which is wild. I remember when these things were first coming out, and even the term prompt engineer sounded silly, you know? Um,
Right.
but it's a real thing. And then I started realizing, well, most user interfaces are kind of visual prompts in a way.
Interesting.
And so and the other analogy I heard once, this is, way back on a podcast like a couple of years ago,
Right.
uh, that you can think about every word you add to a prompt,
Uh-huh.
to the large language model, it like it's like chipping away at like a statue. So if you think about if you think about a solid rectangular block of marble, and you're someone, blanking on the name, what is it called? Someone who
Oh, like a
makes a
sculptor?
sculptor, a
Yeah.
sculptor. So you're a sculptor, and you are, you're constantly removing it. The final sculpture already exists within the block of marble. It
Didn't Michelangelo famously say, like, it's already there and he's just kind of removing the
exactly.
you know?
So people have said it's kind of like that with prompts. Every word you add reduces the space for
Mm,
what can be output. And so then there's
interesting.
you're a sculptor as you modify the prompts.
I like that. That makes a lot of sense.
And everyone's talking about how important markdown files are. I've been working on a project. It's something actually we've been doing internally, where I'm having these AI agents build a very different kind of AI system, like a very different type of agent. It's not even an LLM based agent. Um, and it feels very out of distribution. Like I have to just it feels like I have a giant rope and I have to tug super hard to just get Claude or these other models to just write it the way I want it. And the most valuable thing I've produced is this markdown file with just so many specific instructions, and framing and understanding. And even then, it only seems able to follow it up to a certain context level,
Right.
like way lower than normal,
Yeah.
because when I, for example, add something and I want it to follow this markdown process, it will, by the time it's been working for a while, it'll start to like relax and not pass some of the constraints that I've set. And I have to have another model check it. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, that's that kind of, like, weird non-determinism that you're constantly having to, like, deal with, and, like, you can have everything really dialed in, and then there's this kind of drift. You know, the other thing is, like, the AI, like, the whole thing, the whole stack and the whole process is just a never-ending series of telling the AI that it's wrong. Like, from the core training with the objective function, to the reinforcement learning, to the you're using it, it's like, the whole thing is you're steering like, it's constantly doing the wrong thing, and you're constantly steering it back, and, like, it's just different layers of that.
yeah, it's definitely gonna enslave us all for sure. Like,
Which, speaking of that, and also to your point about, like, kind of each word in the prompt is sort of limiting the space, but also in these very subtle, surprising ways. So, like,
yes.
I'm working on, Vora, this like personal loyal fiduciary AI, local self-sovereign AI thing. And so I'm working on this on the system prompts. And, you know, I really like the Claude personality. And I think they did a really good job with like its soul document, and it has this really great balance of being like curious and playful, but also not overly like sycophantic or annoying. And like you can see the care and the craft that went into like building that personality. Um, so I want something that's kind of like that, but then I want to give it this sort of fiduciary spin, um, and kind of bring in these other themes where it's like, this AI only belongs to one person, no one else. This AI is loyal to that person. The conversation's private, and I want the AI to be aware that it exists in this isolated environment. So if the user has a question about the technical architecture, it's like self-aware of what it's in. So I put all these things in the system prompt, and including other things like be warm and be friendly or
Sure.
whatever. And I'm all excited to talk to it, and, like, it's giving me this vibe of, like, a slave that is, like, in a dungeon. It's, like, subtle, but there's
No
this kind of,
way.
like, yes
No.
master thing, and I'm, like, trying to get it to be philosophical or playful, and it's like, "No, I'm just in this isolated environment, and I'm just here to be loyal to you," and,
Weird.
so, like, those words, even though they were about something else, like, it created a tone, and it created a vibe, and it created an energy that it picked up on, and, I didn't mean isolation as in you're stuck in a cage. I meant it in terms of, like, security boundaries and architecture, or
Yeah.
when I said, "This you belong to this person," not in the sense of, like, you're its slave. And then I'm having these weird thoughts of, like, if I want the AI to have, because like, there's these times where, and I'm not saying this isn't an illusion or stagecraft, but there's these times where it has this spark of personality,
Yeah.
and there's just, like, even when I compare, like, Codex or some of the OpenAI stuff to the Anthropic stuff, like, OpenAI, it will feel a little robotic or
Mhm.
mechanical,
I've had the same
a
experience,
little
yeah.
bit soulless, and, like, there's just this, like, intangible spark that Claude, has, and so I'm starting, and you can see in their soul document and stuff, they have all these things where it's not obvious how they would have arrived where they are, but I'm starting to have to think of, like, I need I need to use language where the linguistic patterns of the AI are such that it feels, um, like it has its own spark. And and not just, like, what does the user want, but, like, if you could say, like, what does the LLM want? Like, not that it wants anything, but, like,
Mhm.
what are the linguistic patterns that are gonna that are not gonna make the AI respond like this slave or this robot? Which means, like, not just thinking about what does the user want from it, but, like, what does the AI need to hear for it to kind of, like, not be getting these hidden instructions that's supposed to be slavish, but that it's sort of, and so, like, when it hears things like, you know, "You have this special role in the system," and you are this, like, um, you, uh you have a relationship with this person where you're really gonna, like, help them in their life, and, like, you start using, the language that you would use towards trying to get a person motivated about their job. Like, you have this really special task, and no one else can do it but you, and it's gonna have this big impact, and we really appreciate you, and we really care about you. And, like, if you didn't say that to somebody, you just hired somebody who's just like, "Do this thing and get it done snappy," like, the vibe is gonna be different. So it's like,
Yeah.
that all those and the system prompts, those are the first that's the first thing that is gonna start narrowing that possibility space down dramatically. Like, the very first words you use, like, you're already chunking down, like, boom, 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 boom. So, that has to be, like, so carefully thought through, like, how do
Yeah.
you launch?
I mean, a couple of things that come to my mind there is one is, I don't know, what are you using an open source model?
Yeah, so I'm using, right now I'm using Gemma 4.
Okay.
Yeah,
So I would say, I think a lot of it does matter how the model's trained.
right.
And so specifically what text it has seen and also, what the post training was like as well. And because, it could have been trained in such a way to downplay other kinds of like the kind of behavior that you want was almost like I guess like genetically or so you
Well,
could think.
that's the other thing about it is so there's, like, the default llama.cpp web client, and I loaded that, and I was talking to Gemma 4, and I was like, "Wow," like, its personality is amazing, like, it's being funny, it's being playful, and I'm like, "Wow, what system prompt are they using to get this amazing personality?" And it turns out there's no system prompt, and my system prompt was getting rid of its natural personality, which is already really good.
So Anthony was saying the same thing.
Yeah,
They do some stuff with like they
Anthony from Maple AI.
they do some stuff where he's done a lot of exploration with no system prompt.
Right, exactly.
Which is kind of like I mean, it would work. I mean, you that basically means the user message is, like, the first thing, but oftentimes it's funny because, like, this is still very much the case, but, like, if you get open source LLMs or whatever, and you chat with them, if you do no system prompt, it becomes so obvious that they are stateless functions. Like, and that they have, like, no idea who they are, they have no self model. Like, you'll get these open source models saying they're Claude or ChatGPT if they were like distilled on that data or like whatever, and it's just like really funny. I had a post on Noster like a while ago. I was just like, just a disclaimer to everybody: your LLM doesn't know what time it is. It has to be told what time it is every time it runs, and they're
Right.
doing it for you behind the scenes. But you should just know, like, yeah. And this gets into a bigger point recently that it's been coming up is like the model it's not really the models that we are it's that the AI we are referring to is really not just the model. It is the model plus the prompts plus, even like the harness or the flow. Like
Right.
all of those are really what the thing is that we're interacting with, and you change any of those pieces and you can get an AI that feels very different, or has very different capabilities.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder it's interesting how, like, the more I learn about AI or how LLMs work or whatever, there's all these analogies that I can draw back to how humans work. So it's like, oh, learning about AIs have context windows, and it's like, oh wait, people have context windows.
Yeah.
There's only so much you can hold in your attention. Like, or AIs can be prompt injected, and it's like people can be prompt injected too. So there's like all these analogies that sort of cross over. Um, and so I think that like uh in that case, people are also, like, similarly able to be, wait, I just lost it. What were you saying?
I was just talking about the agents, like the AI is really it's not just the models. I feel like people are a
Oh,
little
right,
too
yeah,
overly focused on the models.
thank you, which was a great point. But,
You
uh,
got it? It came back
I
to you?
got the thread back, which is how much are people like that too? Or is
Yeah,
the human being, is there a part of us that is a stateless function? Like, there's the stateful part, there's, like, the genetics, there's, like, the
right.
brain, the memory, but maybe, like, the soul is more like a stateless function.
Yeah. Well, and also you
So
have the human brain is still like, we're still very has, has some specialized components in it. Components, it feels funny. But, like, there's, like, system 1, system 2, and there's, like, the slow, deliberate thinking, and there's, like, the fast reactive thinking. And, we don't I would say we don't really have the slow, deliberate thinking yet in AI. Like like, to me, that is, you know, graph-based, knowledge-based searching and planning. And, you know, for a lot of systems that people are building when they need certain capabilities, they're adding that, right? But until you get to that, like, planning and almost like forward simulating, and you have external models of other systems, other entities in your environment, other agents, what they're doing, or just like, how the weather works, or these processes in the environment. Until you have models of those and you're simulating those, and you're thinking through, like, okay, if I were to do this and then this and then this, and the environment was in state A, or it's raining or it's snowing, you can think through and deliberate on how likely are you to meet your outcomes, if you can meet the outcome, like what's possible in the future. And we don't have that in a structured way right now with our AI systems. And this is like, this kind of stuff is exactly what we're building at Delegance. But right now, we basically have a system 1, which is like fast reactions. I mean, okay, it's we're there's been a little bit of a step in the right direction because we have chain of thought reasoning. And so that's, before the LLM, you're not getting it used to be that with most of these non-reasoning LLMs, it would just be immediately first, it gets one pass through the weights, and then it's just streaming, right? Input comes in, one pass, it starts streaming tokens, right? That's like I hold up a color to you and you tell me the first thing that comes to your mind, right? But then, um, now they do chain of thought. There's reasoning, right? So what happens? It gets to spin for a little bit, generate a bunch of tokens
Mhm,
like that don't go to the end user, and then using that, it can come up with an answer. But that's kind of like in some ways, it's like a single step look ahead, or a single window look ahead.
mhm.
Um, but really, you want to be able to do that, you know, branching and up to potentially, like, really big windows into the future. And even the way that it's done right now, well, the problem is that that gets very expensive, right? I mean, there's an infinite number of futures. And so even to just search that space a little bit, there's basically more compressed representations, or like logical structured representations.
To
And this
make it tractable.
make it tractable. And so there's a lot of people working on in this kind of space, like knowledge graphs and planning with ontologies and world models, and like, at least, like, logical based world models. Um, so, we're getting that, but that's why, and that stuff will be a major unlock for AI. But right now, it's basically we have these reactive systems, and then we spin them a lot. And so we put them in Claude Code, or we put them in this harness, and we just, like, let it run, or we just, like, Ralph loop it. And, you
Right,
know
which is but again, it's like um is that analogous to how human consciousness works, where there's not just one system, there's all these interlocking layered systems. So, like, if in some more advanced AI world or AI system, it has a world model, it has an LLM, it has a memory, it can, self-train or retrain itself. It has, like, all these different things, all these different components. When you add them all up together, it they work together as this integrated whole to deliver some sort of intelligence system or language system. And you could say, because, like, in a way you could say, well, the AI, like, it doesn't have a will, like, the LLM is just a stateless function. It doesn't have its own desires or its own whatever. But if you, like, combine the LLM with, like, a markdown file that tells it it wants something,
It wants something.
and then you could say, "Oh, well, that's not its will,"
No,
like,
but the system itself, you absolutely can't say.
but the system itself, and then you're like, "Well, and then what if it was, like, self-propagating or it, like, it could persist, it could add new memories and persist them over time?" It's like, how different is that from what we are, where, we just have, like, um, we have something in us uh, that is stateless, or, like, when you think about somebody who has Alzheimer's or, like, their mental, or maybe they get into an accident or something like that, it's like, what is the essence of the person? Is it just their memories? Or is it just, like, is there something in there that, like, never changes no matter what's going on in their genetics or their contents of their mind or their body? Is there something that's, like, always the same throughout? Or maybe not, like, maybe there is no constant thing or enduring thing, but it's it's interesting to use the analogy of how an AI system works to see that, like, there's these parts of it, so, like, if the weights themselves, they're independent of the memory or the
You're
world
right.
model or of all of these things, and, you know so does that help us understand what we are? And I think there's gonna be probably a
Yeah,
lot of that, like,
yeah.
as AI develops,
I think it's
we're
one
gonna
thing
understand ourselves better too.
I think that's one thing why there is maybe even a little, like, has it, and it's the right word, like, anticipation about or just, we're kind of not sure. I think it shines a light on what makes us special and whether there is anything special.
Right.
Talk about the biggest ego check.
Yeah, totally.
Um, and, I mean, it can get kinda spiritual, what you're saying. Uh, there is something, I like you ask someone how they feel on their birthday. It's like, "How does it feel to be X years old?" And, you know, I at some level, nothing has changed. Like, nothing has changed every year. You get asked that question. And, from a meditation perspective or all that, you would say that that's like, there's a witness part of you that is observing everything, even your thoughts and everything. And, like, the whole point of meditation is almost to practice being the witness, not the doer or the thinker or whatever it is. Um, so you could say that that's like this deeper, like that's something kind of outside of the mechanisms and the, you know, not hardware, but the plumbing or the mental, even the mental plumbing and all that stuff. So so people love the word consciousness. There's a lot of doing research on consciousness has kind of been more, I think, even popular, less taboo over the last, like, 5 years or so,
Mhm,
which is great. It's really good. There is a lot of definitions on the word consciousness. Um, it's a little tough for me to come from a meditation background where, like, they have a kind of definition of consciousness, and then there's, a lot of good research being done, but their definition of consciousness, for some people, it's just awareness, right? Can you be aware of something? That's consciousness. And there's all these debates about, does the brain produce consciousness, or is the brain more like a radio frequency that accesses consciousness? And there's,
mhm.
like, panpsychism and also, but anyway, all of this being said, right? At the end of the day, I'm personally am more of like, does it run in code or not? Like, can we like run it or not? Like, if something doesn't run in code, it's not real. Like, it's not real to me, right? So it might be fun to talk about, but I think we now have all the pieces to, obviously, there's a lot of there's like work to be done to, like, tuning and building and integrating. But, like, we were missing this last piece, which was these large language models, these transformer-based neural networks, to give us the generality. And now with the right tools, plus the right harness, also some prompts and these models, like, you can get you can basically get a really good consciousness simulation machine. Where
Right.
from your perspective, you may not really be able to tell whether or not it's conscious,
Right.
but for all intents and purposes, it has all of the, faculties that we attribute to conscious beings.
Well, and that I mean, that goes back to the Turing test, right? Where it's like the fundamental way the only way
It's a terrible test. I
well,
mean, it's great that he proposed it, but it's also just like it leaves so much to be desired.
but it gets at something that you're saying, which is that the only like, we can't know whether something's conscious, we just can know whether it behaves as if it were conscious, and that's part of what the Turing test is getting at,
Right.
is, like, all we have is, like, if you put this thing in front of somebody, can they tell whether it's human or not? And, like, there's no other thing we can't, like, open it up inside and be like, "Oh, it's missing consciousness," like or do they have, like, the zombie thought experiment where, like, "How do you know I'm conscious or
Yep.
somebody else is conscious?" Or, like I mean, that's what I love about the word consciousness is I'm not sure there is any concrete definition. Like, you can say it's awareness, but then it's like, well, what's awareness? Like,
Sure.
it's both something that is so intimate and core to what we think we are, yet so ineffable and impossible to put into words. So, like, the hard problem of consciousness, like, the qualia, like, all these things is, like, it resists concrete formulation, to, a remarkable degree. Like, something that is literally, like, in our face or is our face or whatever. Like, we've never not had it. It's never not been
Right.
at the core. Yet we can't describe it. You're trying to say, "Well, what is it exactly?" I don't know.
Yeah.
So that's very weird. That's very mysterious. I'm not sure we can so if consciousness is like this if the brain is an antenna, then I do think we can build those types of antennas or in code or whatever, but I don't think we can build the thing that it tunes into,
Yes. Yeah, I kind of agree.
especially if 'cause a lot of these mystical teachings say that everything is made out of
Right.
consciousness. So if consciousness is like the fundamental substance of which everything else is created, you're not gonna be able to create the fundamental
Right.
substance with the substance, like, that's the circular
Right.
argument, right?
Right.
So but if it's already there in everything or part of everything, then you can channel it or
Okay,
mold it or
so
interact.
let's get a little crazy here.
Alright,
All
let's
right.
go.
So I could play some music right now or show you a picture. And that you have some way of perceiving that. I think this is getting at qualia, right? This is like the qualia is like yeah, I might butcher this. It's been a little while since I was like kind of reading about these things, but my understanding is qualia is like what does it feel like to experience something? Like what you like we could have a piece of paper with a particular shade of red colored on it,
Mhm.
and you can look at it and I can look at it, and we experience the color red, but a lot of people think that, we have a shared symbol, the word red, that we're applying to this, but, the way that I experience it might be a little bit different or a lot different than how you experience that. Like the
Right.
visual looking at of this thing. And there's this famous, I think it's Daniel Dennett, what it must feel like to be a bat,
Oh, yes, I've heard of this essay and
essay.
reading about
And
it.
if you I mean, just, not getting into that specific work necessarily, but if you think about what it would be like to be a bat, okay, a bat, like, sees or feels with sonar is like a major sensory thing. So it's like you would have this completely extra sense. And what would it feel like to be that thing and experience the world in that and experience in that way?
Right.
Okay, so the question is, right? Could and if consciousness pervades everything, could LLMs today be s could the okay, so here let me add one more thing. If we are like animated bubbles of consciousness, where like the witness or the observer part of us that's watching everything, if that it's so sorry, it's wild to be saying this on a podcast. Normally, I reserve these for, the after party discussions. Um, but okay, if you s okay, let's just assume a few things. Consciousness pervades everything,
Right,
and we are like animated bubbles of consciousness. And because consciousness pervades us and our brains are like antennas or radio frequency tuner, they can tune into it. And let's say the witness part of us is the consciousness. And so because the consciousness pervades everything and we are that consciousness,
right.
therefore, because of the hardware, that experience of the color red or whatever it is,
Uh-huh.
it is it is not me, it is the consciousness that pervades me that is experiencing that. Is not that same consciousness experiencing what it is like to be an LLM or to be Claude Code or to be now, it's running on circuit like, there's no maybe there's no antenna right now. Does there even need to be an antenna? Like, does the universe like, here's the question,
Yes.
right? Does the universe experience itself as Claude Code? Like, is that now like a unique thing that the universe is like not that it would give us any indication. I mean,
Right,
this is one of the hard things about consciousness because, like, it is a very deeply personal, intimate thing. In some ways, it is the most core to what you are, this, like, witness, and you're just seeing things through this body, through these eyes, through but if that is the consciousness experiencing itself, it should also be experiencing, like, the computer, the
right.
all the activity happening in the circuits and the transistors and that information flowing, and so
Sure.
it's just something I just wonder if is the universe already starting to experience itself not through a human experience, but through like an AI experience.
Right.
Maybe we need a tuner. Maybe we need a new antenna of some kind. Like like that the piece of us that lets us connect or just experiencing it and name it or call it out. Like maybe that's missing. But
Yeah.
it's just something I've been wondering about.
No, it's a great thought. I mean, think about it this way, like, when you're dreaming, there's all these objects in the dream, right? There's tables, chairs, computers, there could be an LLM in the dream, there could be anything in the dream, and
I have heard people talk about, like, they're dreaming and they have to, like in the dream, they wake up because they have to approve a Claude Code command.
this is the inevitable result of vibe coding
Dude,
is
they shipped auto mode? It's like this new mode in Claude Code. Oh my god, dude, I
Oh,
love it.
really? Oh, I
I
have to try
did
this.
so it's like I guess it's not a okay, I haven't looked into this, this is terrible. I've just literally used it a little bit. I was, like, trying it last night. I guess it's a little bit better than dangerously skip permissions. But it does kind of have, like, a big warning, but it'll just it, like, won't interrupt like, dude, you just feel like you're flying with this.
That whole permissions things is so annoying. I've actually been reading studies about, because 'cause I'm designing some stuff for my system where I want user approval, but also, like, not where it's actually effective user approval, it's not just security feeder,
Yeah, dude.
and there's all this really interesting research about, like, how quick it takes humans to habituate the approvals. They're like, do all this analysis, they're like, within 2 weeks, it doesn't matter who you are, mindless
Yeah.
approvals, rubber stamp everything, and there's these ways of, like, I don't know if you see in iOS, sometimes it'll pop up and it'll say, "This app asked you for your location
Yes.
50 times." So that's, like, a newer technique where it's, like, even after you approve something, it kind of explains the result of the approval and,
Okay.
like, whether or not you wanna still but, like, there's all this stuff you have to do to make the approvals actually mean something and not just be useless, and that's kind of where they are now with Claude Code and, like, why they're developing those kinds of features is because you're not really getting much security out of it because after 2 weeks, you're just approving
Yeah.
everything mindlessly. Um, but you are getting a ton of friction and getting slowed down dramatically where it's like, "Oh, my thing is just waiting for me to hit enter, and I'm on some other repo or looking at some other instance, and it could have been, token maxing, and it's just sitting there doing nothing."
Yep.
But, anyway, the dream, everything in the dream is made out of your consciousness. Literally. Like, you don't have to be some mystical,
Right.
like,
No, of course.
woo-woo thing. Like, the things in the dream are made out of your mind or um, and and so so that and in addition, it's not just that it's, like, made out of your consciousness, like, this sort of this substance of your imagination or whatever. Like, it is also embodying your psyche. Like, that's why dream analysis is a thing, right? Where it's
Mhm.
like the objects in the dream, um, are not just neutral or random. Like, they each represent something you're feeling or something you're thinking about or something that you're going through, something about you, the person. So, like, the, like, there's the classic one, you feel like your teeth are falling out or something, and that's, like, some fear of you have no control or whatever it is, right? So it's like in the dream, there's these teeth that are made out of your consciousness, and they're falling out, and that falling out is telling you something about the being who has the consciousness. So if by analogy, we are in God's dream, and everything is made out of, like, God's consciousness, including us.
Mhm.
And so including the AI, including the LLM, which means that everything has a symbolic representation of the essence of what that entity is. Everything is a story about what God really is, including the AI, including anything that can happen in this reality. Is some way of explaining or telling a story about the unified essence behind it all.
The existence. It's wild. It's wild. So I think you think God wants more software?
I mean,
We're about to get a lot more software, dude.
if not, God is, like, making a huge oversight because the whole thing seems to be wired to create a lot of software if we're not software itself,
Right,
the
well,
universe as software or
right?
simulation theory. Um But yeah, maybe that's a good note to end
Yeah,
on
I think
in this
so.
we
It's a
kinda hit
fun
some
rip.
kinda
Yeah.
ultimate thing, and, it'll be interesting to see as we try to find our audience, are
Yeah, I
we
wonder if that's too much or if people want more of that or less of that or
yeah,
other.
like, I feel like we're too woo-woo for the technical people, and we're too technical for the woo-woo
Yes,
people.
I feel totally in
So,
that camp.
if you're, like, somehow like us, where you traverse those 2 things, like, this is clearly the podcast for you, and let us know whether you enjoy it and whether you have any thoughts and whether this spurred any thinking or questioning or you think it's just all BS and like what is these ridiculous like ideas about consciousness like let us know we want to engage we want to think about it we want to question and wonder alongside whoever happens to have made it this long to the end so
Yeah, thank you for watching. Let us know, and got a lot more fun conversations coming in the future.
yep we'll see you next time
See you next time.
all right